Welcome to Monte Rio Redwoods. 1,500 acres of towering trees and Russian River streams. For 100 years, this has been privately owned land. Today, we can change that. With your help, Save the Redwoods League can conserve this special place forever, connecting 34 square miles of habitat and allowing the future expansion of trails and parks for all. Let's keep the redwoods standing tall together. To help now, visit savetheredwoods.org.
There's no other place like Sedona. No other place. Not what happens here. It's not the same.
Talking with Tom Dongo. Tom has 8 books available on Amazon.
I talked to a woman once. She was the CEO of a major corporation in New York. She gave up everything. Her family, her husband, her top spot in this big corporation, and came to Sedona. And she said, I don't know why, but I just know I'm coming home. I had to be here. I wrote about that. Almost the whole book is about that. People were here. They said, I'm here, but I don't know why, what drew me here. So I interviewed them and put their story in my book.
The Quest.
Yeah.
I've got that.
Thing, yeah.
Susan Stavoy, she was the one who lived in San Francisco and said she just kept getting a sensation that she needed to pay attention to this voice. And it was saying, move to Sedona, and kept repeating, move to Sedona. And so she didn't tell anybody. She just quit her job, relocated. And she said after she lived there, she had an out-of-body experience that changed her life because she was meeting energy beings who spoke with her about what would happen. So that's the kind of dramatic upheaval and redirect when somebody gets that call to go to Sedona. There's a purpose and a point, and it's fascinating.
You know, I've been called one of the best remote viewers in the world. You know, I've proved it. I had a psychologist test me for 4 months to see how good I was. So I kind of proved I can prove it. It bothers me because we have abilities, we have powers. Either we've been made to be stupid or they're drummed out of us in society. But we have abilities that are phenomenal that we're not using. We don't like remote viewing. You know, and I can see into a human body like an X-ray machine. I've done it hundreds and hundreds of times. So we have abilities. You know, the six-pack hamburger crowd. You know, it's just not. They're not there. You know, I can see them because of my remote viewing ability. We have phenomenal powers we're not using because we didn't evolve here. We were put here a long time ago. Something put us here. So. Did we lose those abilities then? You know, that it's just been like a kid, you know, say, "Oh, mommy, you know, I played with these invisible beings," and "Oh, Jimmy, no, that's just your imagination. You weren't doing that. You've got to forget it. You silly little boy." You know, so the kids get it drummed out of them early, but they're on their way to a phenomenal psychic abilities or remote viewing or whatever, but you know, somebody, their uncle, their parents, drum it out of them.
An example, when I was a kid, I had an imaginary friend, and my imaginary friend's name was Hago. Mom said I talked about Hago until I went to kindergarten, and there was a specific thing that when I asked later on, I wanted to remember what Hago looked like, and I was shown the image of a dwarf riding a fox, and then reading later about little people and all that good stuff, and it's finding out, well, you know what, that was real. The other part of it was when we were riding in the car, and again, prior to going to kindergarten, I told Mom, Hago flew out the window. And that was the last time I mentioned my imaginary friend who wasn't imaginary. But the deal is, when I went to school, there's no one that I would tell that to. That was between my mom and I, and she didn't discourage me. She listened, and she gave me the memory that, yes, this was real for me. But I think that's something that is common, is when kids get to that age of going to school and being socialized, there's a stigma if you talk about any of that. And so I kept some of my stuff to myself. I knew better.
Well, you know, Edgar Casey grew up with invisible friends. You know, they said maybe he's nuts, but so he grew up with them.
Yeah,
4 or 5 invisible friends. Edgar Casey. You know, they turned into one of the world's all-time best healers.
Yes.
So I do a lot of posts on Facebook. I just put one in that I got a big kick out of this. A friend of mine interviewed the police chief of the Yakima Indian nation in Washington, and he, in his uniform and in his patrol car, he filmed it. So anyway, the guy, my friend Spar wanted to talk about UFOs. That's what he's here for. And so the police chief didn't. He talked a little bit about UFOs and extraterrestrials, but he wanted to talk about little people. So he spent the whole hour or whatever talking about little people, and he said he'd be on patrol sometimes, and they'd be sitting in the trees, little people, 10 inches tall. Mm-hmm. And he was coming down a steep mountain dirt road one time in his patrol car, and there was they saw each other at the same time. There was a little woman carrying a shoulder load of sticks. He got real close and realized she was only 10 inches tall. He jumped out of his cruiser and chased her, and she ran into the rocks and ran behind a rock and disappeared. And then I personally interviewed this woman that she was in Sacramento, California. She's 5 years old. She was out playing in the family garden one day. She came face to face with this little man. He had a funny hat on. He had color, lots of colors on his clothes and pointed red shoes. And so she grabbed him, ran into the house, and the little guy struggling like crazy, trying to get away. And she says, "Daddy, look what I got! Look what I got!" And he was reading the newspaper. He said, "No, okay, later, dear, later. I'm reading the newspaper." So finally, he put the newspaper down, and he screamed, I guess, and jumped up and scared her so bad she dropped the little man. And he ran out the door, and everything. The door was still open because he couldn't. He had a heck of a time getting down the porch steps. Mm. There were 6 or 8 steps, and he ran back into the garden. He disappeared. But that stuff. I know some more stories like that, but they're a little different. It's not a joke in Scotland about little men, and they can be real dangerous. There's a book, I can't remember it's a huge book. I read it long time ago. It must be 500 pages about the little people. And there's a place in Ireland, I think it is. Everybody stays away from that mountain because the dangerous ones are there. Mm-hmm. So they just leave them alone. So I've got endless stories like this. I love, I love getting into this stuff with people.
I want to go back into the Sedona stuff because you have the portals in Sedona, and that's another element that the portals are everywhere. But it's also a thing that when you know where they are, then you can appreciate the weird stuff that happens around a portal and recognize it when it's in another space that people may not know about.
Well, Linda Bradshaw and I spent 4.5 years, about 3 nights a week. We had camera crews out there every week from somewhere in the world. Japan, Australia, Swiss, Germany, and BBC, to interview. I got real tired of being interviewed. Every week I had cameras on me and lights on me. So but at any rate, Linda Bradshaw, and I say this without hesitation because Linda Bradshaw, there was a big portal, and I don't think it's still there, only about 30 feet from the ranch house, big one, about 20 feet across. It seems sometimes like we were in Times Square. So many creatures were around us. And I think Linda died 3 years ago. I felt that we whatever those creatures were, they could see us, but we couldn't see them. But Linda and I must have absorbed. That's why I have these strange abilities. I have very strange abilities, and I think Linda and I absorbed stuff from them. 15 years ago, the University of California, Berkeley, wanted me to come there for 2 weeks. I'm so strange. I just had strange abilities. The University of California, Berkeley, wanted me to come there, and they were going to pay all expenses for 2 weeks and study me. Professor Harder, he was one that sponsored me. At any rate, so anyway, portals they're absolutely real. But this one at the Bradshaw Ranch it was famous, world famous. We used to get attacked a lot. People say, "Oh, you guys are nuts! A couple of fruitcakes, a couple of nut jobs," But they were real. Linda could sense them coming through out of that portal. She could almost see them, but I couldn't. We could smell them once in a while. Sometimes they smell like roses, and sometimes they smell like burning sulfur, tar and sulfur. No joke. So we could smell them.
And I understand. There's also a change. It's hard for me to describe it, but for me it's like there's a high altitude feel when there is something that I'm aware of that is an element, alien, ET, other dimensional, but all of a sudden the air is real crisp and your senses increase when they're there.
Yeah.
Like your hearing, your smell, everything just kind of is amplified. And then I know, okay, I've got company. But definitely the change in the atmosphere is, to me, that's an indicator.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. I probably talked about this. I never get tired about talking about some of these stories. Linda and I, in one night, we took photographs that are world famous. My first Merging Dimensions, we had a lot of those photographs. But we would just use film cameras, point and shoot, because we had no money. Linda Bradshaw and I had no money. Now, some of these places, like the Skinwalker Ranch, they have millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of ground-penetrating radar, all kinds of radar and whatnot, and drills. I know all about the Skinwalker Ranch. Brandon Fugel is a good friend of mine. He's the owner of Skinwalker Ranch. So, but anyway, we had nothing. Linda Bradshaw and I had nothing, and we finally bought a camcorder. Panasonic came out with one. This is a long time ago, and digital cameras came out yet. But digital cameras seem to take the same kind of photographs as film cameras, 35 millimeter film cameras. So that's all Linda and I had was 35 millimeter film, and it was expensive. So we would shoot a roll of film and not develop them, but we'd develop the negatives, which is only cost a couple of bucks. And then we'd look at the negatives on a light table and see what we could see on the negatives, and then we would develop those. I had something one night, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. I think I hurt something badly because we found that the beings that were around us, they could see us because the cameras, when they were powered up, had a red light on them. So we found out they were watching those red lights because they knew we were going to do something. We'd take a picture straight above, behind us, between our legs, anything. And so we put our we put our thumbs over those red lights, and we found out they confused them. Mm-hmm. So I was in my van. I had a big Dodge van, and I was reloading my camera, and something came in behind me. I could feel it. So I loaded the camera and hit the power up button, and I put my thumb over the red light. And when it was bright red, I turned around real fast, and I pressed the shutter on the way around. Yeah. This thing I saw, as long as I live, I'll never forget it. It exploded in front of me. I mean, right in front of me, and it looked like a daisy, a flower. It just exploded in front of me, yellow and white, just like a daisy flower. And it wilted, it melted right in front of me. Like I think I hurt something very badly. Wow. So I felt bad about that, all these years.
Yeah. And that's the thing, there are some of the contactees that say that they are afraid of us because we tend to be violent, volatile, unpredictable, and that's why we might need to be frozen before we have contact with them as self-preservation for them. I was going to mention the back cover of Merging Dimensions. This is the first one. There is an image on the back, and they were having these drone issues earlier this year or later in the fall. Anyway, the drones that they were taking pictures of, some of them actually resemble this picture. So it's really fascinating. When this picture was taken a decade or two ago, these images that we're seeing now of the drones, some of them resemble that photo. I think there's more going on here than just what we're being told intentionally, because for one, not everybody sees the same thing. And two, not everyone can photograph these things.
No. Well, I've been told that the drones aren't ET, but they're back engineered. I was taught by a top level person that told me this. No, they're not actually ET, but they're back engineered, and the ones you're seeing they're basically government or private drones. They're back engineered ET stuff. So I just said, okay, well, let's see what happens. And some of that stuff, it's not fake, and it is absolutely not drones. I mean, there's no drone. And some of them, of course, are fake. They're artificial intelligence. Yeah. So, all this stuff that's going on, my poor old mind, I can't keep up with it. But I have whistleblowers. I know many of them. So I'm just waiting to see what happens. When I was younger, I'd be right in the middle of all of it. I don't have the energy anymore. But
well,
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a lot more complex
Go ahead.
now. There are multiple players, and there's many different levels because you have the government and you have the people who are trying to spread disinformation. You have the people who are experiencers, and then the people who are just curious and wanting to, be part of something. And so all of these people are spreading stories, and it really gets difficult to figure out which one is legit. What thread do I follow? For me, most of it has to do with someone who's actually had an experience because they have more details than the people who are just looking and say, oh, I saw it up in the sky. Well, that's not where it's really happening. It's happening right next to you. And if you can't figure that out, then you're a day late and a dollar short, because this stuff, it's really important for us to figure out why and what is happening right next to us. That's where it's real.
Well, I'm extremely well informed. And so I know the difference. And a lot of people, I go, I think, oh, God. I mean, there's so often Neverland. They're leading other people totally astray. It's a dead-end street. It's false information. So I just leave it. I don't have the energy to get involved or criticize it. But I know people, that I basically know what the reality is, what's going on. And I'll tell you about the ETs I met. One was she had to be an extraterrestrial. I was with my girlfriend, Petrolina, at the time. This is a long time ago, about 15 years ago. And it had been a rainy day. Mud was everywhere, and it was the dry creeks were roaring with water. I was looking for Sonawa Indian ruins, and it rained so much it changed everything. I couldn't find it. So this girl appears out of nowhere. We were way off in the boonies, and she didn't have a dog with her. That's the first thing I noticed. And it was most women. The crime here is almost zero, but women that hike by themselves usually have a dog with them. So anyway, she didn't have a dog. And I was sweaty. I was soaked sweaty. I had mud all over me. I wasn't, these things always catch you by surprise, always. So this girl comes walking out of the bushes. She had a red pants and a white wool sweater on. And I'm looking at her. I think she had street shoes on because we had hiking boots on. You lift your foot up, you got 6 inches of mud sticking to the bottom of your boot. That's the kind of walking we had that day.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, she goes over to my Petrolina, my girlfriend at the time, and they were talking. So the girl came over to me, and she looked about 27 years old. She was probably about 500 years old. I've been told that human extraterrestrials can live around 800 years. Anyway, so the girl comes over to me, and I said, hey, by the way, do you know where the trail is here that goes down to the Sonawa ruins? And she pointed right by my feet. And I said, well, you're right. That's the trail. And it's totally washed out, from all the rain. And so I wanted to say, how did you know that? So, because I couldn't find it, I'd been there. So anyway, the girl, she was talking to me, and I had to put she was talking so almost a whisper. She was talking so low, and she didn't know what she was talking about. So I said, well, thank you. So we went down there. It's so steep. It was about a 45-degree angle down to the creek. And we got down there, and I forgot about the girl in red and white. The water was roaring in that creek because all the rain and snow had melted up in the high country. I was talking to Petrolina. She was a little ways away, and I turned around. And the girl had materialized in front of me so close, like a foot. I turned around, and I kind of jumped back because if I'd have turned around fast, I probably would have knocked her down. Literally a foot in front of me. And so I'm looking all over the place. I'm looking up on the trail, and there's no possible way she could have walked down that trail with the kind of shoes she had on. So these beings, they're known as the great tricksters. They'll catch us by surprise, and they know how to do it. There have been books written about the tricksters, extraterrestrials. They love to play tricks on us stupid humans. So the girl was talking, so I had to almost put my ear up to her mouth. She was talking about the ruins, and the petroglyphs. It's a funny thing, they were all sexual stuff. They were over 1,000 years old. And so we said, I never thought, I've thought of this a million times, and I got a couple of other stories like this that have been filmed, recreated on TV, big TV shows. But anyway, I wish that I'd have asked her if I could have touched her. Because because Petrolina came over, we were both talking to her. And then I had to turn around just for a second. I came back and she was gone. The girls, but we talked to her. It wasn't just some kind of an imagination. And I could see 100 yards in all directions, and she was nowhere. So she materialized and she dematerialized. And she couldn't have been a ghost, and she couldn't have been she had to have been an extraterrestrial. A couple of big radio hosts said, well, somebody was invisible. It was either you or them. I'm thinking, well, damn, you're probably right. But anyway, we were in a supermarket at night, and she had wraparound sunglasses on, and I'm 6 foot, almost 6'2", and she was just taller than I am. Yeah, she was a tall white, and white skin, and everything she had on her hair was black. Her sunglasses, wraparound sunglasses were black at 9 o'clock at night. She had all black clothing on, and I was 5 feet away from her, and she never looked at me once. Yeah, and she was terrified. And the guy that she was with was about 6'5". He had a green eye and a blue eye, and he was probably a Nordic. And so he comes along, he kind of smirks when he sees her. And people are going by us, wheeling their carts around us, and nobody looked at either one of us. He comes over, he had kind of a smirk on his face. He took her by the arm and led her away, and he didn't look at me once. And my friend Augie Nost on his show said, well, somebody was invisible. It's either you or them. Oh, damn, I guess you're probably right. So anyway, people ask me, what did they buy? What did they buy? And I say, well, cheap hamburger, Twinkies, and white bread. It's just a joke, But they didn't buy anything. She was wheeling the cart, and they were taking stuff off the shelves, and you could tell what they were saying. Humans actually eat this blank, and they look at it and put it back, and they pick something else up. Humans actually eat this blank. You can imagine what I said. Mm-hmm. But they did that. They were going, and they never bought anything. And I had to leave, so I left. But that's my ET stories.
You said you met three times.
Yeah.
What's the third?
I've interviewed hundreds of people who've had face-to-face alien contact of different kinds. Hundreds.
There was a story I saw today, and it's from Linda Moulton Howe's book, Glimpses of Realities. And she has two of them, volume 1 and 2. And there was a lady who, when she was younger, she remembered she had been abducted, and she saw in a huge area rows and rows of bodies in tubes, and they were like just bodies waiting to be used. And she was told that she was going to be, that one of those bodies was hers. She kept her story anonymous, and then she connected with Linda in 2020 before she died and said, I'll give my name now. And I had a near-death experience, and I went right back to where that tube is, and there's my body. And she says, well, what was that like? She said it was like going home, and that they were here because why was she here, when that was her home? Basically studying what it was like to be human and whether we were worthy of being rescued or, in some way helped. And she said from her perspective, we were, because when there's a catastrophe, then we naturally, most of us, are concerned about our other people, and some of us will even, put ourselves in harm's way or die to save somebody else. And that was what she said. But that was just thought, when you're talking about seeing these other beings and these other ETs, she described the beings that took her and what that was like. And there are so many variations. They're not all just grays or reptilians or something big and ugly, and that's the thing. And the other thing is sometimes ugly isn't necessarily bad. It's just that's how they look. No. And if we would get over our, fight or flight thing, we might be able to appreciate the unique form.
Yeah, exactly. This stuff I hesitate to talk about because, people need to know. They need to be aware of this stuff that I know. Well, is this a prison planet, or are we somebody's herd of cattle? That's the two things. Yeah. And I think it's both. So my remote viewing ability is phenomenal. So the missing 411, David Paulides.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's about 300,000 people that disappear every year on the planet total. Just poof, they're gone. I watched a guy. He was walking right beside me one day, right here, and we were in the middle of a parking lot, and he was gone. And I looked all over for him just to make sure. He was a young guy, about 27 years old. I couldn't find him. He just disappeared. So anyway, some of this stuff I hesitate to talk about. I was on Coast to Coast with Connie Willis, and I said, "No, Connie, I'm going to talk about this." Connie and I got to be good friends. Anyway, David Paulides, he gave there was a deer hunter. He gave the coordinates of where this guy disappeared, so I was able to zero in on him. And because these people, this missing 411, there's a lot more than 411 now. There's thousands. And even I've heard that the park rangers in the national parks warn people: put your kids in front of you, don't put them behind you. So people just think, well, gee, why is that? But
the last one disappears.
I know some things I won't talk about that stuff. It's just too freaky. But
okay, here's one. Artie Six Killer Clark, and she interviewed a lot of Native Americans.
Right.
And so one of her stories was that there was a young woman, along with her mother. This young woman was making preparations to leave. And they were planning, they would not come back. They were going on a ship. And she said when she tried to reconnect with them, they were gone. And that was it. But the whole thing was they knew exactly what they were doing. They were preparing, and they were being prepared, told to eat a certain diet, no meat, to be able to go and make that transition to the other, wherever they were going. So this is, she's been talking to people who don't usually talk. There's so many stories that we don't have access to because there are some people who refuse to talk about it.
The stuff I talk about is truth. It's not BS. I don't. There's a lot of people that make this stuff up, and I cringe. I almost pull my hair out because they're wasting people's time. But what I talk about, I can prove it. It's truth. The deer hunter. I had on the map basically the coordinates of where he disappeared. So I was able to put myself there, and I went to the Berkeley Psychic Institute for a couple of years, so I learned a lot. Mm-hmm. And I learned that I had amazing psychic abilities. So I combine psychic abilities with remote viewing. So that's one of my tricks. But anyway, this guy, I was able to track him. They leave a trail. Whenever somebody contacts you or whatever, like this guy left a trail.
Yeah,
I could follow him. And so I'm going faster and faster and faster. And somebody asked me one time on a show, were you going up or you going down? I said, well, that's a good question. We're going up real fast every time. So I was going up, and suddenly something slammed my brakes on. So I'm just standing there, who's messing with me, So I heard a voice that said, this is as far as you go. And General Stubblebine in Denver, I was there with one of his talks. He had about 800 of the best remote viewers in the world, and I could do things they couldn't. So anyway, there's a wall there. They do put up a wall. In fact, I was just asked this on a show I was on. It is a wall that remote viewers can't penetrate, and there is. Something puts these things up, and you can't get through them. Mm-hmm. But I can. I learned how to do it early on with my technique. So I'm looking at this thing, and I said, and the voice said, don't even try it. I said this on Coast to Coast. There were probably 7 or 8, 9 million people listening to me. I think people need to know this stuff. I mean, it's my experience, and it happened. It's real. I'm not making it up. So anyway, I'm looking at this wall, and I could go through it. But what was on the other side? What was it that didn't want me to see? Was it more wonderful or more horrible than we can imagine? And I think it was both. There's some things I've learned since. So we need to know this stuff. There's so much curiosity these days. People need to know this. Awareness is our defense. If you're aware of it, you can defend yourself against it. I said this a million times. Stupidity is not going to help you.
Well, you backed off when it said you don't want to do that. Yeah. Ingo Swan, remote viewer, his niece said that at one point he did basically cross a barrier because whatever he contacted was then to the end of his life still in some way annoying him. Really, he could not block it. And he was incredibly gifted, very psychic, extremely good with remote viewing. But whatever it was that he connected with, I would suggest that crossed a boundary, that he didn't, and he might not have known. But once you do that, then there's no taking it back. She said he couldn't block whatever that last encounter was. Yeah. So when you heard that, okay, fine. It doesn't matter what it is. I've been told no, and sometimes that's just respect. You might earn something as a result of saying, okay, he will respect us. Here, we'll take him to the next level. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I read Ingo's book. A good friend of mine, he's a retired Air Force colonel. He was one of the original government remote viewers taught by Ingo Soltari. And he and I are the best of friends. Anyway, it's funny, he won't talk when his wife is around. Evidently, he criticizes him, so he won't say anything. But we used to meet in restaurants, and we'd talk about stuff. And I'd say, Ron, he used to be one of the vice presidents of Lockheed Aircraft. He knew the big people back then. He's 84 years old now. I joked one day, if we were in a Bible Belt restaurant and they overheard what we're talking about, because we were talking about crazy stuff, Mars, bases on Mars. And I said we wouldn't get out of this town alive, but we'd be tarred and feathered. We wouldn't get out of this town alive. So he laughed about that. But we would talk about stuff, and so one day. Yeah, he's a retired U.S. Air Force colonel. He said, hey, they follow him still. They follow him all over the place. And so we were at a casino having, it was busy, it was noisy in there. And he said, yeah, they follow me all over the place. This is just a couple of years ago. And you see those two guys over there, one guy looks like a jarhead, U.S. Marine, like that, and the other guy looks like a bookkeeper. And you see that, look what's on the table. And it looked like a cell phone. He said, that's not a cell phone. They're recording what we're talking about. Oh. So I kind of stretched my neck and peeked over at him. And the jarhead saw me doing that. So a few minutes later, he said, they follow me all over the place still. So they walked by me, and the jarhead gave me a really dirty look because they knew, we knew who they were.
You weren't supposed to look. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I know. So Ron said, yeah, those two guys over there, see that thing that's on the table? It looks like a cell phone. It's not. They're recording what we're talking about. So I said, gee whiz, are we that important? Something like that. So I have something, it's either extraterrestrial or spiritual. It's protected me my whole life. I could have been killed at least 6 times. But I won't talk about that now. But something protects me. Something very powerful watches over me. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that because it's pretty in-depth stuff. But
do you remember at any point that you have had contact, or that that you have something else you're supposed to do? Some people remember.
Yeah, somebody said, I've had more people say, Tom, you're not human, you're alien. And I must have had a pre-life agreement. I must have had an agreement to do what I'm doing now. I said a million times, why me? Is it a curse or is it a blessing? I see stuff and understand stuff that I've talked to the best in the world, the smartest people in the world, the investigators and all that, and I usually can talk over their heads. So anyway, I could name names, but so I do what I do. I do what I do. I have real things that happen, mind-blowing things. Is it a curse or is it a blessing? And people say, oh, it's a blessing. Oh, it's wonderful. You have an incredible life. Yeah, well, not always.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Welcome to Monte Rio Redwoods. 1,500 acres of towering trees and Russian river streams. For 100 years, this has been privately owned land. Today, we can change that. With your help, Save the Redwoods League can conserve this special place forever, connecting 34 square miles of habitat and allowing the future expansion of trails and parks for all. Let's keep the redwoods standing tall together. To help now, visit savetheredwoods.org.
I want to educate people. I want people to know what I know, and most of the time, and I have people that they say, if you need a backup, here's my name and my phone number. You call me and I'll back you up, because I was there. I saw it too, the stuff that you saw. So I have a few left like that. I had a whole family of 6 people, and I still know where they are. They like my stuff. But the 6 people, and we had a UFO come so close, we could throw in a tennis ball and hit it. It floated like a feather, and it was orange. It was about 40 feet across. And most of the UFOs around here are orange for some reason. I have no idea why that is. And this was orange, and it had 3 huge orange spheres inside of it.
Yeah.
And it floated like a feather right over us. And because all the cameras were put away, and by the time I got my camera out, my Sony, I videotaped it, but it wasn't any good. It was so far away. You know, it's stuff like that. I've seen probably 400 UFOs. I had a tour company for 23 years, and our UFO tours were extremely popular. So I got really sick of doing UFO tours after a while, 2 or 3 times a week. I got really sick of it, but I probably saw 400 alien spacecraft over those times. With witnesses, I've had witnesses every time. But that's not me making it up. I had witnesses. So, I've been there and done that. And I didn't finish the thing about the guy that disappeared. So there's about 300,000 people that disappear every year. And I've had different opinions about what happens to them. You know, people say, gee, I wonder if they really are eating us, you know. And I don't know. I don't. I really don't, you know. And I talk to the best of the best. You know, I've said to some of the best remote viewers on this planet, prove me wrong. If you prove me wrong, that's the end of it. Nobody does. Where did about 300,000 people go? Disappear. Poof, gone. Where do they go? People need to think about that, because, you know, the defense is the knowledge. The awareness of this stuff is the defense against it. There's something in your subconscious that will keep you from happening. You have an awareness of this, a knowledge. So that's kind of where I'm at with all the stuff I do.
Well, the other thing you also do, the healing ability. And has that been with you your entire life, or did it increase when you moved to Sedona?
Well, you know, not so much a healing ability. I've even done this on medical doctors, and I don't do it much anymore because I guess I'm kind of bored with it. But I can see in the body and see. I've done it. I've done it on 3 medical doctors. They, okay, bud, check me out. You know, so I did, and I got 91. One guy, I was in a class with him in Sedona. He said, "Well, you did everything right except my back." And I said, "Really? Well, turn around." The guy was so fat I couldn't see through him. That's when I found out. He turned around and I said, "Oh yeah." So I put my finger right on it. He goes, "Oh, oh," like that. Yeah.
Proof.
So, and I've done that with a couple of others. I used to be so well known with this stuff. I'd have meet people every day in a coffee shop, and all the time I had people come up, standing by my table, and say, "Will you please check me out? You know, take a look at my body." I would. I never charged them money or tell them to get away. I always did, and it happened a lot. And I've done that. I've rarely charged anybody money, but I cured a girl. There's a guy down in Phoenix. Well, he's not doing it anymore, so I'm not going to mention his name. But he was phenomenal healer. He and I could see into a human body exactly the same way. That he could heal people. He's a phenomenal healer. So I'm not that good. But one time there was I got involved in this thing. A girl had 4-stage cancer. She was about 23 years old, and she was from the Philippines, I guess. They lived in Philadelphia. No, she's Chinese from Singapore. So anyway, she was her mother. Her mother gave me $200. I said, no, okay, that'll do. I could probably be filthy rich right now, doing this stuff, but I don't want to do it. I'm solving murders. I've solved about 4 murders, and I tell on shows, I say, I'm not doing murders. Don't ask, and I'm not healing anybody. I don't ask. But the girl was dying of cancer, so I thought, well, I'll take a shot at it. And I did. I have saved the letter from her mother that says, I am beside myself with joy. I just took my daughter from the hospital, and she has no cancer in her body, 4-stage, because I took the cancer out of her body. So anyway, I asked Spirit. I said, well, Spirit, what am I going to do with this? Yeah, and they showed me. So I put 3 bodies up, visualize 3 bodies, hers, and make sure she's looking at you. And then take the cancer out of her body, put it in an etheric body, and watch it die. And when you see it dying, put it in a shadow body, and this cancer will die. Well, that's what it did. I've tried that with other people, and they have not been very successful at it.
That's excellent. That's excellent. But that's a recipe. That's something maybe, somebody can copy that and figure out how to work with that energy, because that's very specific.
Well, if somebody wants to try it, have the person, she might be 1,000, because this girl was 1,000 miles away. Have them looking towards you, her attention on you, that person's attention on you. And then picture an etheric body next to her, take the cancer out of her body, put it in the etheric body, and you'll see it starting to die. And then take the cancer and put it into a shadow body, a third body, and it will die. And it did. Yeah. I cured her of cancer. But I've had other people try it with no luck at all. So
everybody's different.
That's it.
Everybody's different, but that recipe might work for somebody, and if it works for just one person, that's a win.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give it away. I don't charge $10,000. So.
Well, you also were talking about Ron when you were meeting with Ron earlier. I think I interrupted that.
Yeah. He was the vice president of Lockheed, one of the vice presidents of Lockheed Aircraft, and a colonel, Air Force colonel. Ron was in uniform. Those guys look pretty fancy, in the colonel's uniform. He was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in Sandia Peak, and Linda Moulton-Howe lives in Albuquerque. I don't know if she knows this or not. But Sandia Peak, there was an alien base in Sandia Peak in Albuquerque, New Mexico. There was an alien base. So Ron, here he is, a colonel, and he says, I want to see what's in that mountain, and I want to see it now. And the guy, whatever, the sergeant or whatever, says, yeah, okay, I'll take you there. So they did. And he said the inside of that mountain, the caves inside of that mountain was so clean. They cleaned it, they sanitized it so well you could have eaten off the floor. But the extraterrestrials were gone, but they were there. Ron was there. He was in the mountain. So, yeah.
These things have been rumored for decades. And just now it's more okay to talk about it. And some of the people who are remote viewers, it's just all of a sudden you're not getting erased, shall I say, disappeared.
I tell you, some of the stuff that we've talked about would get you killed. 10 years ago, it would have got you killed. It was just, but now nobody's getting killed anymore. I mean, everybody's talking about everything. I don't know of anybody in 5 years that's disappeared. It's been shot in the back of the head, committing suicide 5 times. That kind of stuff. So I want to educate the world. So I just I talk about it, and I know people that talk about stuff way more serious than stuff I talk about. So and nobody's been hurt. So it's not going on anymore. There's just too much being exposed. Being the whistleblowers. Are talking about all this stuff, and and just exposing it. So the assassins can't keep up with it.
You don't have the Men in Black stories as much.
Oh yeah, you want to hear a few?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there was a while where I interviewed a lot of people about Men in Black, and I don't know who they are. I don't know whether they're government or extraterrestrial. I really don't know. I've never been able to find out. But they're probably extraterrestrial. At any rate, there's some kind of a creature. Men in Black are some kind of a creature I don't understand. And the children with black eyes, those children with black eyes, when they come to your car and they want to get in, don't let them. They're children, and they have all black eyes. Stay away from them. They're extremely dangerous. But the Men in Black is a little bit different thing. Actually, one of my best friends met a Man in Black. He said that guy wasn't human. He didn't have a soul. I talked to him, and he talks like he was a zombie. So there's just something about Men in Black that are they're very different.
I've got a story, my own account, and I do think they're ET. Yeah. It was a dream, of course, and so what happened was I was in a field in the dream looking up at the stars at night, and this big black car drives through the field, and 3 men in black, dressed in black. They had different, like a fedora hat. They all had hats on. I couldn't really see their features. Didn't really see the eyes, but they came up to me, and the gist of it was they told me, we need you to start doing what you agreed to do when you came here. And in the dream, I knew what that meant. Now, when I woke up and realized, okay, I need to change my life, which I did. I made some immediate changes in the direction of my life, not really knowing, but somehow on some level, I know. And I also know that was real. The description, just the Men in Black, they were dressed in black. The car was black. I knew it was important for me to listen to them. And there isn't a personality, at least when, from that, it was just basically I was being given instructions and I was supposed to remember it. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been in that form. So there's another element that to have a dream about Men in Black when I really didn't give a darn or had no interest whatsoever about any of that. Yeah. And then out of the blue to get that message and somehow know when I woke up that I needed to do a few things and it was important. So, I think they appear to people in certain ways, whatever way you can bring context to it. And sometimes it's frightening. Other times it's helpful. And most of the time, it's a piece of information that you are given to deal with. And I think they make their point when they tell people to stop. There was one UFO researcher who was researching for decades and they said, stop. And he did. He was done. I can't remember his name. Darn it. It's just too much information. Yeah. But that's how serious that can be. I just knew when they told me that there was something I needed to do and I hadn't finished it yet. So game on.
There's something really weird about the Men in Black because they would always drive these black Cadillacs. They sort of looked like a Cadillac, but they weren't. Just something like they were created.
A big long black car. Yeah, a big long black car. Yep. That was what was so weird about it. I'm out in the middle of a field, and here comes this car driving. This big, like a limo, the big long black car. Right. And just out of context. So and just there are other stories that, and I think Mothman is also very popular.
That's pretty weird, Mothman. That's that gets into cryptids, and I've gotten deeply into cryptids. I have the opinion that the cryptids are coming from. Do you know that now? This is recent. That they call it. It's a chip anyway. They've been able to penetrate 16 dimensions.
A chip that can penetrate 16 dimensions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They put it in a supercomputer, and scientists are actually afraid that they're fearful that those computers, they're quantum computers. They call them quantum computers, and they're penetrating. And we don't really want whatever's in those dimensions to know we're here, because what if we draw something in our dimension that we can't deal with? So, that's pretty cool. They say now there are 16 dimensions that we know of. So, and these, I'm really up on cryptids. Don't get me started on cryptids because these things are coming from other dimensions.
Yeah.
They're here for a while. It materialized, and I've had some big arguments with big name people about this stuff.
That's what happened at Bradshaw Ranch. I mean, you saw it right there. And then Skinwalker has the same stuff when they have these things that look like dogmen. And then the Native Americans have talked about that for, this isn't new.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, okay, why doesn't it make sense in our science? Well, that's not the problem. The problem is it's here, so deal with it.
Well, I was just on a couple of big shows in England and out of England, and we talked a lot about dogmen. And dogmen, that's the one fear I have, is running into a damn dogman. They are absolutely real, and they're werewolves. They've been here as long as we have, and they're all over this country, the United States. The worst ones in the Mississippi Valley, and the worst of the worst ones are in Texas and near where my great friend Laura Lee Potvin lives in Thunder Bay, Ontario. In the Great Lakes, that chunk of land right in the middle of the Great Lakes, the absolute worst dogmen are there. I've seen videos on it. They've documented it. So anyway, dogmen, and I was talking to Bob Brown in England. We used that most of the show talking about dogmen. They're werewolves, and there's something I don't see. I can remote view these things. It scares the hell out of me. It really does. There's something weird, conniving, and scary about dogmen. That they're just something. Well, I don't want to say evil. They just are the way they are. But dogmen are damn scary.
So more of a predator, basically, a predator.
Well, yeah, they can be. And when a human, there haven't been many humans been killed by dogmen, but when they are, there have been about a half a dozen that I know about in the last 50 years or whatever. But the government shows up with machine guns and electronic gear and runs into the woods. So what the hell do they know that we don't about dogmen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they know something.
So, they know something. But what is it? I don't know. I can't remote view it. Us remote viewers are blocked on some things. I can't remote a dogman. It's just something that stops you, So I don't mess with it. I just give it up. I say, okay, fine.
Well, do you feel like sometimes when you remote view that you're being seen?
Oh yeah. Well, Well, yeah. The U.S. government's got people. They're a little more than remote viewers, but they and I'm thinking, have they watched me? Probably. But I was at the Sedona airport about 10 years ago, and I had a feeling somebody's watching me, so I stopped and I focused. Somebody was remote viewing me. So I followed the cord, the trail.
Yeah.
It went to Budapest, Hungary. And I'm looking down. I pop into this place. I'm looking down. There's a man and a woman all dressed in black with their heads down. And then the heads snap back and look at me, and they start laughing because I found them.
Yeah.
They were remote.
Busted.
They were remote. Yeah, busted. Yeah, they laughed about it. They said, "Oh, you're pretty cool if you can do this." So.
Uh-huh. Well, it's like, I think, you're on the same plane. So you're meeting somebody who's a peer rather than a specimen.
Yeah, same frequency, right?
Yeah. These are abilities I think we are meant to utilize.
Yes.
We are meant to explore and expand. And it gets us out of all that war stuff of, I want to kill somebody. It's like, come on, you got more to do than just doing that.
That's why I say I wish I could give it away to millions of people. Hopefully there'd be a few thousand would train other people, keep it going. I wish I could, because if people knew what I can see, just about everybody wants to be a good remote viewer, but it takes, you can't do it one weekend. It takes a while. It takes, a lot of work.
Well, I think you also have to realize that, just because you're doing something that seems to be effortless and you're not running out of breath, it still does take energy. You are still depending on what level you're working at, you get exhausted because it is an effort and you have to take a break.
It's concentration. You have to. It takes concentration that you have to keep focused. That's the trick of it. So anyway, my friend Ron, the colonel, the Air Force colonel, I've had some good times with him because he was trained by Ingo Swan and Russell Tower. We've had some. Around here, I don't have anybody to play with because Ron, they've left. They moved away a few years ago, so I don't know anybody around here. But me and Ron had some really fun times remote viewing different things.
Is it legal?
Yeah, it's not that it's not legal, but I've had people say, did you have permission to do something like this to somebody? And I'd say, no, I just do it. That really pisses some people off. It really does. That you didn't ask permission. I said, no, I never do.
Well, I think, there's a control thing with that. It's like, if you can do it and you're doing it, right. Well, okay, that's what's happening. If you want to get on somebody about controlling it, then they need to learn their own abilities and see how that works.
Yeah, it offends them, because they can't do it.
You can't, I cannot tell you, don't do this. Well, I can say it, but it's up to you. You make that choice of whether you're going to do it or not. And we have to deal with people on that level of, just because I don't think it's okay for you to do it, doesn't mean maybe somewhere along the line it is okay, because you're not going to get any better until you keep practicing, and maybe sometimes get shut down by the person who actually sees that you're remote viewing them. Ha ha. And that's the way it works. We get better.
Yeah. Well, it's if everybody was a remote viewer, there would be no secrets.
That's right.
So this BS that goes on right now around the world, there would be no secrets. Because I was in a bad car accident about 20 years ago, and people said, well, that was no accident. I had brain injury, and I lost a lot of my abilities. I could do anything before that, anything. And I used to be able to read people's minds, and I used to do it a lot, and people used to tell me this BS story, like people do all the time, they do it all the time. So, and I would know what the truth was, and I've done this so many times, and I remember one woman, because your uncle raped you when you're 8 years old, she started screaming and crying. And I got bored doing that after a while. And she said, my God, you can actually see that? And I said, yeah. So people don't tell the truth a lot. And now I don't know. I can't. I can't. I've actually done that on extraterrestrials, read their mind. And I've got a story. Oh God, I'm thinking about 5 other stories. But anyway, I don't do stage presentations anymore. But I was about 150 people. I can go out into space and find alien spacecraft and go on them. And I found out. I thought I've got to be insane doing this stuff. I've got to be nuts. And I found out the U.S. government remote viewers are doing the exact same thing that I was, like Joe McMoneagle. They were doing the same thing I was. And I said, well, I'm not crazy. I'm not nuts, because they were doing it. I could go on an alien spacecraft. You approach one out there, and if you got warned off, if you got threatened, don't come any closer. Well, don't leave immediately, because they're not joking. Mm. But if you fly up, if you remote view up to one, and if you don't feel any threat, you feel welcome. Well, go on the ship. I've done it many times. It's boring now, and people say, "Oh my God, you're bored doing that?" I said, "Yeah," but I would go around the ship and just look at things, and the lights and the gauges and all that. And they would all look up and they say, "Oh, another damn human." They see you. They could see you instantly when you remote viewed onto the craft. Oh, so anyway, I had about 150 people, and I said, I can remote view alien spacecraft. And I said, you guys want to try it? And none of these people were remote viewers. So I said, well, just in your imagination, just do it. You think it's your imagination, so do it anyway. Go out there and find an alien spacecraft, and if you feel welcome on it, go on it. And so a bunch of people in the audience, the expressions on their faces were hilarious, because they really did it. They went on an alien spacecraft. I've never seen one. They were all humanoid. So there was one. He was probably 2 or 3 million years ahead of us. Most of them are millions of years ahead of us. So I asked him. I said, "Hey, bud, can I scan your mind?" He said, "Yeah, sure, have at it." So I penetrated this extraterrestrial's mind, probably 2 or 3 million years ahead of us. I couldn't penetrate very far, but enough so that I could understand what incredible beings they were. I mean, they don't do things with their hands; they do it with their minds.
Mm-hmm.
They do everything with their minds, and they can do, the stuff we do with our hands and whatnot. They do it with their minds. And I could only penetrate a little bit. I couldn't go all the way into this being's mind. I wish I did, but maybe I've had people I've heard stories of people that did that. They say they wish they didn't because they got damaged by the power of that being's mind.
The ships are supposedly, engaged by mental abilities, telepathy, that they're engaging the ships. And then not only that, the ships aren't necessarily like nuts and bolts. The ships are also some kind of a form of a being.
Yeah, their minds run the ship. They don't have controls like we do. And I was just asked on a show, why don't can you go? Usually when you do one of these shows, it's opaque. I mean, when you're on a remote viewing, it's not usually crystal clear. It's opaque. It's a little bit fuzzy. If somebody said, "Can you go onto an alien craft and focus on how they control it?" And so I did this recently. I looked intensely at the controls. It's pretty weird. Their minds, and I wasn't going to mess with it. I wasn't going to touch it. But there was a seat, and that pilot. The ship was alive, in the mind of that. I say, well, people say, well, why don't you do that? And I said, no, I'm not that stupid. But the mind of that being control. The ship was alive. It's some kind of there's a living thing somehow, and the extraterrestrial's mind controlled it. So they worked together to do what they did.
Basically like our version of a horse.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, good comparison, yeah.
Let's wrap it up. Is there anything else? I mean, you've got 8 books now, and I've got at least 3.
My only distributor now is Amazon. It's the only one I have left. And Merging Dimensions is kind of my bread and butter. Merging Dimensions. Yeah, it's about the Bradshaw Ranch. It's a good seller. It sells real well. So I'm happy about that. But Merging, not emerging, it's merging with an M. Merging Dimensions is all about the Bradshaw Ranch.
Yeah, and one that's with all that you and Linda did. That's just fantastic. The stories that you guys, everything you experienced. Yeah. I appreciate you taking the time to talk, and I'm looking forward. You're still experiencing, so that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, this thing coming up, we may have alien intervention. It may happen, and I'm hoping it does. I mean, I'm waiting for them to tell me. The whistleblowers are. It's kind of been quieted down for some reason, but I'm waiting for this guy to say, yeah, they're going to intervene. It's not an invasion. It's just they're going to stop us from blowing the planet up with nuclear weapons. That's basically what it is. So, but this guy. I tried to remote view this a little bit. The guy said I met one of them face to face, and he said it scared the bejeebers out of me. This guy. So that's pretty cool. They're not human extraterrestrials. They must be super powerful, which is cool with me. I mean, let's have at it.
Yeah, a higher force saying, "Okay, kids, it's time to quit. Stand down. Stand down."
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to hear. I want you to at least put the word out when you hear.
Okay.
Thank you. Right. I'll let you go.
Okay. Thanks, Wendy.
Tom has 8 books, and they're available on Amazon.
Where did about 300,000 people go? Disappear. Poof, gone. Where do they go? People need to think about that.
Thanks for listening.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to say, ahoy, or land ho, and not feel weird about it. So here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance offers access to the largest towing fleet on the water. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to say, shiver me timbers, and not feel weird about that either. Get more with Geico.
Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to fling your favorite fishing rod around. And here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance covers your boat and your belongings. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to high-five someone. But not while you're holding your fishing rod. That's a prized possession. So hold on tight with both hands and keep it covered through boat insurance. Get more with Geico.